Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome again to another episode on Talk Architecture with your host, Naziaty Muhammad Yaacob. Today, the episode is on the same topic, part 2, educated but unprepared. Who's really at fault? Now, that was done some time ago. And lots of stuff came out. But I promised Seshan Design that I would do part 2 to have a content is on what went wrong in architecture education and how and why we lost our direction. Spanning from me starting architecture in 1980 until now. So 46 years of reflection. So it's just from me today. As promised, this topic is focusing on what went wrong. Now, obviously, it's based on my experience, which is a former academic who started teaching in 1991 to 1994, and I continued in 1997 until 2022. So there were 2 universities that I served as a junior lecturer or an assistant lecturer, and later as a lecturer, senior lecturer, and associate professor. So it's, of course, telling that I was educated in architecture in 1980, where there is no digital architecture, only came about when I realized about, in practice, in 1987, when I was in London with Rock Townsend, and Rock Townsend hired an outside company to do the plans for that particular project, the Angel Square project. Speculative office 5 stories high over Angel Square Station, which is the Angel Station, but it's the Northern Line. So I did a lot of the sections, and the computer can't do the sections at that time. I did by hand, of course, because I was trained like that. I never actually knew how to draw on computers or digital architecture, as honest as I can say. So what it is that I was recognized as a good a member of the team, and I was given as recognition of that. I was given a free trip to Glasgow with another person. There was the Glasgow festival. I think it's to do with arts and architecture. They did the waterfront of the docks. So that was in 87, and then obviously I continued with part 2, and then I came back to teach. And of course, at that time, people were still doing manual drawings. Things were happening, in mid-90s. Then when I went back to teaching architecture in 1997, a few years down the road, people were doing things digitally. Some students were able to do digitally. I mean, we never tell students at that time, force them to do digitally. It was in the 2010s when academic staff, wanted students to do digitally. And at first it was optional. And at one point in 2019, I had to defend students who decided not to do digitally at all. There was a case of one student who did everything by hand in 2019, yes, for the design thesis. And commendable that they do it with using manual drawings, because it takes many tracing paper overlays to draw again and again. Somehow we do accept mistakes, but sometimes when you draw freehand or you draw manually, how you want to erase it, right? If you were to use tracing paper, you will scrape it with a blade, and then you have to tidy it up or make it smooth again with an eraser so they can draw over it, and you'd want to get the line right. So traditionally or conventionally, we need to know about line weights, and that was one of the things that I find frustrating as someone who review other people's drawings. Students starting to not understand line weights and not taking responsibility, or they have only two different line weights. One is thin and one is thick. And the value of the architecture drawing is not really, you don't see the depth of it. You don't see the understanding of what, like concrete would have to have. If you cut through it, the line weight would be heavier when compared to you cut through wood. Maybe for concrete you have 0.7 and for wood 0.35, and in elevations you would have it in 0.1, right? So students don't really know about the outline of the elevation. They don't really know how to judge, and when they cut a section, the elevation. And when they cut, they are not understanding about how it is being put together. So, yes, in my promise to Seshan Design is that I would like to say somewhere after the 2010s, students start losing control over the fundamental skill of drawing clearly. Drawings become not so clear, and I get a bit frustrated if I can't really read it. And then students like to do crits with a laptop, and I need them to zoom out, zoom in, and it's kind of frustrating. Rather than you have it pin up on the wall and you can discern from that easily whether the lines are clear or not, and whether they did it right. So there was this difficulty to give feedback from me. So I reckon that other tutors have the same problem, and I have heard of them having the same problem to actually read what the students draw. And the reliability on SketchUp. So there was this digital drawing tools or softwares that are easier for them to draw and present last minute, or they don't want you to really appraise it before the presentation because they don't want to redo it, and all the headache of trying to understand and trying to redo it. They don't have the time. So they will present something that, there's a compromise going on. Some tutors will say, okay, we can see what he's trying to do. Trying to do is different than evidently drawn. We can't grade on possibilities. In architecture, before we communicate to others, our drawings to the contractors, consultants, we got it right. We have to get it spot on. It is drawn, and we banking our professionalism, banking on our identity as an architect on that drawing that is complete. And it's not, we can't grade on possibilities or it looks right. So we all are victims of our circumstances. We are also victims of the expectations of the time that students need not be, shall we say, fail due to drawing communications problem. And so students also want feedback that is positive because, like, feedback like, you're doing great. You're on the right course of action. You're potentially an A student or whatever. I mean, those kind of evaluations or feedback that says you're doing a great job, and they don't want to hear you got to redo, you got to do it again. They are in a studio and they're seeing their other friends doing drawings after drawings for the presentation, but they are stuck because they can't figure it out, because they can't see it and we can't see it, and we're stuck. So the skill of drawing or communicating to others is flawed. And it's a shame, really, that such a thing happened. In part 1, we talk about drawing clearly, understanding how buildings put together, and we touch upon that in retrospect of my experience. The accuracy, coordination, and accountability is also being mentioned here because students don't feel, lacking in their skills. And then I have seen students complaining about that in threads and social media, being rejected. They're graduated and they're being rejected by numerous companies when they submit their drawings, and they don't know what is wrong. What is actually wrong with their work? They have no idea. I did mention in the first part that clearly the fault lies in the system or on the academics, on tutors and lecturers in universities. And I also said that the fault lies on the system of key performance indicators, and when you need to rise in position, you would spend your time less on teaching because teaching becomes 30%. And there's also evidence of the management thinking that teaching should be 0%. So we got feedback from the Board of Architects that says that only those academics that put 30% will get teaching or studio teaching, and a certain level will only be studio masters. But you can clearly see that we're losing control of the fundamental skills in universities. And we gotta fight back this. Unfortunately, we do have to fight back with the country qualification framework or Malaysian qualification agency to tell them that we can't have 30% teaching and expect that our architects have a strong fundamental skills in what was listed here on drawing clearly, understanding how buildings put together, accuracy, coordination, and accountability. We can't have the profession in the future being disrespected by other professions and people refusing to collaborate with us because we don't seem to have the fundamental skills. Now, I'm saying this from a reaction to Seshan Design post and many discussions earlier on the quality of graduates being frustrated, they've been rejected a lot and do not know what seems to be the problem with their work because all seems good when they were in the university and the feedback that they got. So we have lost control. We have lost our way. It is very, 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 very serious matter. in which we need to get back into a position of respect within the professional bodies, professions in the construction and property industry. And to me, it is a reflection on the salaries that people get as well. There seem to be, this is only my personal opinion, there seems to be a wobbly foundation when you graduate from schools of architecture. That is not particular with the quality of work and the quality of graduates, and you go and venture into employment, you are not confident, because there are other aspects as well apart from the Seshan Design list here. But I think this is very fundamental, because I would agree totally about how understanding how buildings put together is also students or graduates who had gone through exercises of how to actually put things together and able to communicate them clearly. If we get number 1 and number 2 properly done in architecture schools, drawing clearly and understanding how buildings put together, inevitably we get accuracy, coordination, and accountability. Inevitably we get graduates who are confident and has no wobbly foundation in terms of their skill set. So, yes, the system is messing us up, but what are we going to do about it? The institutions such as the Malaysian Institution of Architects and the Board of Architects need to get their act together and embrace this problem, this pain, but do not have to suffer. We don't have to suffer by going to the government and telling them architecture lecturers, who usually take 2 days of studio and 1 or 2 course subjects, such as construction or professional practice or history or theory, So they have this solid 14 hours of studio, and protect that and reflect that in their key performance indicators, and gave them the due recognition and positions that, you have to score about 80%, not 79%, but 80%, so that you can get promoted. And if you were a teacher or you lecturer taking such a long time to get promoted, though you've done your job, it's not right. The system is not right for promotions of lecturers and tutors. Some schools of architecture will have critics from outside, but how long can they spend on the students? Just say they get a few students, just say they have 1 day studio, that's 7 hours. How long do you spend on one student? So if they they have to attend group sessions, they have to attend desk crits. If you keep on having many students in one studio, you need to have many part-time lecturers, dedicated ones, and all understand what are the expectations, and not just focus on presentation or narratives or concepts. That's one of the criticism that was in Seshan Design earlier posts. I also would like to mention that in the second part of this, and been in communication with Seshan Design, and they're working on a handbook for their staff. It's called Internal Operational Design Handbook version 1.2. dated 4th January 2026 on architecture interior design. Just gonna give a quote of what it said in the beginning. Training isn't about long lectures or fancy explanations. It cuts right through the heart of it, isn't it? It's about training, right? Of the architecture graduates. Real training, says here, real training comes from repetition, doing the same things again and again, making mistakes, being corrected, and slowly building muscle memory. That's how people actually learn and practice. Draw, get it wrong, redraw, coordinate, miss something, fix it, go to site, misunderstand something, then see it, build, and realize why it matters. So that's, I'm taking just a part of the quote. And then it goes to say the role of the initial training process isn't to produce perfect drawings immediately. It is to create a control environment where mistakes are allowed, identified, and corrected before they become expensive or dangerous. Yes, it becomes expensive and dangerous when, shall we say, that they go into practice and they have to work for someone. Before, in the universities, is where you could sort the skills out so that it doesn't become dangerous when you draw wrongly. So this handbook is defining how design work and executed in the studio, which is the office in practice. It is to protect the studio because whatever wrong things that has been done, mistakes that has been done and not corrected, the onus is on the office practicing it. To reduce risk and wasted time, ensure reliability of output, make work traceable and defensible. So here it argued that this system does not require talent, does not require brilliance, does not require experience. I have a lot of students who are C plus or C students in the past that I know they will do well, even though they were C students, because they can draw with the fundamental skills. This was some time back. So, and there was justification to what I thought, because when I went to a dinner celebration of 25 years anniversary of the faculty in the School of Architecture, there was solid architects. I mean, the who came to greet me, their own practice, doing well. So I can't remember them being brilliant students. There are brilliant students amongst them at that time, but some of them were just playful, but they did produce work that is clear and understandable, and it works constructionally. So they must have been hard workers. We try to instill hardworking students, and that is to be the highest trait, the highest characteristics that an architect should have. And it shows here as well in the handbook by Seshan Design. So what requires is that design work need to be disciplined, clarity or clear, and accountable or accountability. And this is fundamentals. It showed a lot more. There are 18 pages of it. Mandatory reporting protocol. When checking any product, component, or supplier item, staff must report all of the following: design allowance, the dimension or condition currently allowed in the drawings, actual product dimensions, confirmed dimensions from the supplier or manufacturer. I mean, a lot of this we teach them in architecture school. I remember I did. But because concepts and narratives become so important, there isn't time to do detailed design in the studios, to be honest. I wish we had that amount of time. And we were tough on this third year studio that, they get the part one, they can work outside. We were tough with the 120s. I mentioned this before, drawings, and they need to actually understand what they draw and not copy it from somewhere. That's fundamental skills. I remember knowing what, as a third year student, I knew what I was drawing, but I got a C or a C plus. So that's why I'm not convinced with the grading of students of architecture, whether they have the full set of skills. The way that certain drawings or certain exercises or assignment is being placed, the importance in School of Architecture in terms of the portfolio need to be looked again. No, I'm really, shall we say, supportive of this handbook. Is that this handbook needs to be also being reflected in the third year studio in architecture. At least half of this, what it says in this handbook, if you do it in schools of architecture, the students just need to learn once, and you need to correct them. You need to have the time to correct them and go through the drawings. If the drawings are not clear, you keep on asking for it, then they don't produce it at the end. The student actually get through the assessment process and graduate, but they didn't have the benefit of that exercise where they had to redo, and redo the drawings. And the tutors don't have time for that because they have that 70% of admin, research, and publication to do. Because when we were drawn to being tutors or architectural lecturers, in the beginning, we were just wanting to help the students and wanting them to do it properly. I can recall that. But we were not burdened by too many other things like admin, research, publications, and research. When we were not burdened with those things, we could attend to the students wholeheartedly, more than the 14 hours per week. And we could go over the drawings again and again. We could teach them right, get them to be more confident. With that 70% of, because the emphasis on universities being businesses now rather than proper educational entities, and you get more students coming in, and what else? And you have ranking system that you, as a university, treat it as very important. So you need to do those publications, and then you need to also earn better pay. So you need to get a better position. And a lot of lecturers got stuck being senior lecturer, and a lot of frustration. They can't be associate professor, and they ask for quality journals to be published in. It really is, well, the word that comes to my mind is a farce, and that we have this university ranking system. I can say it very well because I've experienced it, and you can't really have time to think, really. At the studio, you're also surviving as a lecturer, barely surviving. And the numerous meetings that you have to attend. It is the start of the downfall, as already we are at the downfall. We are down there somewhere in terms of teaching students of architecture. This is not a very positive note that I'm giving, but it needs to be said, and it needs to be told that we have a set of students that are educated. It is certified that they are part one or part two in architecture. They got the Master of Architecture, but they're unprepared for practice. They're unprepared because lack of drawing clarity. They don't understand how buildings put together, the different types of assembly, dry construction with steel and timber, or wet construction with concrete and masonry. It's not shown in the sections of the plans, so there is lack of accuracy. Because they have lack of accuracy and a lot of mistakes, and they don't rectify the mistakes, how can they coordinate with the other team members and worse still, the consultants? And therefore they shy away and do not want to take responsibility and accountability, and therefore it's not worthwhile to even have this graduate as part of your practice. So it is a shame, and it is something that we need to point out the problem right now and try to rectify it. And I've said a lot of points, and I've said it before as well, so we're going to keep on saying it. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Over and out.